Thank you for coming tonight. And for those of you who are on Zoom or who are out there tonight, we're going to talk about the living trust and why it's so important and how it deals with estate planning. And so part of the estate planning navigators or the estate planning gurus. And so really just want to kind of talk about a way to protect your assets. And so the number one, and you'll see as we go through, the number one reason that people need a living trust and not just a will is because we want to avoid this thing called probate. And we're going to talk a lot about that tonight. So my name is Brian Arnold, and I will be the person who's talking tonight. So a living trust, should everybody have one? If you have over $74,000 in assets, or you have any real estate at all, you're a person in this country that needs a trust. Some folks think it's just for seniors. I think it's for people who, are getting ready to die, but we don't know, when our number is going to be called. And if we want to pass on those assets to our loved ones, then it's important. And so when we talk about a living trust, we're going to talk about more than just, the death benefit or the benefits when you die, but there's some living benefits as well. So what is a living trust? A couple items to keep in mind is, I just said that once, age is not a factor, and everyone should have one. If you don't have a living trust, it would be most advisable for somebody to consider one. A lot of folks think about their parents, they think about their aunts, their uncles, grandmas. That's super important to even start having the conversation. We're going to record this, so you'll be able to, if they're not on tonight, we'll be able to give you access to being able to find out why it's so important in our country. And so for us anyways, we can do, it's kind of a trivia question, we can do a living trust in just about every state. Can anybody guess what state we cannot do one in?
Alaska.
Nope, but we can do them in Alaska.
New Jersey.
New Jersey, we can do them in New Jersey. The one state that we can't do a living trust in, at least, that's special is, not Colorado. That would be funny. Is Louisiana. And this is how old trusts are. So trust, when we started our country and we think about the laws that we have here, in the rest of the United States, we all use British common law is where the trust came from. Well, the Louisiana doesn't follow British common law. It follows French common law.
That's right.
And so the whole state has whole different rules around trust and probate and all that because Louisiana is not following the British common law. So this is how important it is and how the wealthy have been able to pass on assets without going through this thing called probate. So a revocable living trust is what we're going to talk about today. It protects and preserves your assets and income while you are alive. In case you become, or while you're alive, in case you become incapacitated, it allows for appointed individual to make your medical and financial decisions, and it reduces the cost and time to move your assets to the next generation, preserving your legacy. What is probate? So one of the things that we talk about, the whole purpose of this is to avoid probate, but if we don't really know what probate is, then we kind of, it doesn't really matter. So what is probate? Well, probate is a court process by which legal title of property is transferred from the descendant's estate to his or her beneficiaries. So whatever, that legal title that you have, and you have property or you have money, those things need to be transferred to your beneficiaries. And so the state, in our case in Colorado and the rest of the 49 other states, they want to get in the game and say, how much are you going to give us for us to decide? So what happens is once the owner of the asset dies, probate court is the legal process needed to take their name off the title and the assets put. And what triggers probate? So people ask me that all the time. What is the actual trigger of probate? So if you have real estate and you own any real estate, that's going to trigger probate. And then also if you have over 75 or 74K in undisposed assets. So when I say undisposed assets, like your life insurance and your, what are some of them? I'm trying to think of, it's on the next slide. IRAs, that kind of stuff. You have a beneficiary that is put on there. So the beneficiary, it automatically goes to them, and there's usually not any tax liabilities or something like when life insurance passes, it can't go to probate because it goes straight to the beneficiary. But who wins in probate?
Lawyers.
That's it. That's the only person who wins in the whole probate process. Or I guess the state, gets some of that money Usually someone over, like in Colorado, it's like 8.5%. So if you have $100,000, the state of California wants the state of Colorado wants, $8,500 on a $100,000 stake, just for the judge to say, this is what you want. So one of the things that people say is, why don't I just use a will? So I put will here. This simulates a will. And so what does a will do? So if you have all these assets, and I'm using some props here. So let's say that this is my estate. There's absolutely nothing in it. And so I get a little older and I go ahead and I buy a house, and I put my house, and it goes in here. And I get some cars. Got some cars here. I have some cash that goes in here. And I'm putting all this stuff in my will. I have some big money right here. This is big money. Let me tell you something. This is $100 right here, right? So I got my cash in here. And so I say, okay, well, I got my estate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a will out. And here's the thing. You do not need an attorney to write a will. A lot of people think I have to go and spend, I'm not even sure. There's somebody that I was talking to the other day. They said they spent $1,500 on a will. You can write on a piece of paper, I want my kids to have my house. And that will is good and binding as long as you go get it notarized and you have a witness that says that you did it. So you can do that, and you put all these assets into your thing, and then so you have a will. But what does a will ensure? It just ensures what happens is you die, the will goes on here and it locks all your assets. So now for the next, in Colorado, the minimum is 6 months. So for the next 6 months, all of your assets are locked down. And all that the will did is, then the judge is going to pick it up and he's going to say, okay, on this will it says that my son, in my case, Devin or Stefan or Dominique, Ray or Ricky, get my house. And then the judge goes, okay, after you sell the house and we take our 8.5%, then we'll give you the house. So all a will does is assure, I should put it right side up, right. All a will does is assure that the judge will look at what you said if it's going to go to probate, and then hopefully they will determine. Now, what's really scary about just having a will is anybody can go to the probate court and say and make a claim against that will. That's why it's open for 6 months. I had a friend, Reggie, if you're watching at some point or you see this, you'll remember this, and his mom passed away, and she wrote in her will that his sister and him got the house. Well, she had a back house that had a renter in it. And before she died, the renter was helping take care of her and taking her to the store and all that kind of stuff. And he went to the probate court and showed up and said, she said, I could have the house. And so in our probate world, a person who makes a claim doesn't have to prove it. The people who are the beneficiaries have to prove he does or he doesn't. So that probate took 3 years. He lived in the house the whole time, didn't pay any bills, didn't pay anything before the daughter and the son were able to get the house. And all he had to do was make a claim on that. Remember that? It was so sad. For 3 years, he's like, my mom died. They're super sad. This guy, trying to get the guy that was in the back house out. He was just almost like a squatter. But all she had a will. It was notarized. It was signed. But all it really said was, yep. And so basically, the judge takes, I'm using this to prop to the key, and then he unlocks it and he goes through it. Oh, I actually put this in the wrong box. So I just realized this for my presentation. How come you didn't say nothing? You just stared at me? Oh, the money just fell down. That's all right. It's supposed to be in the probate. All y'all listened to me and didn't even tell me I put the stuff in the wrong box. That's all right. See, you're going to remember this when you watch it now, right?
You want us to restart the recording?
No, let's restart the recording. So, all this is locked in the probate, and it's in the will. All it does is assure it. So what we want to do is we want to get a living trust. So, probate, the average cost is 10% of the gross estate. For probate costs, this includes your home, CDs, brokerage accounts, IRAs, 401k, life insurance, and annuities. Those were all things, but again, like I told you, the IRAs, the life insurance, and the annuities, none of those will go to probate because those usually, you can't even get them without them asking who your beneficiary is. But you should also have a contingent beneficiary because sometimes folks forget to do that on some of those policies. And so let's say it was Renee and myself, we're in a car and she was my beneficiary. If I pass away, all of a sudden, or we both pass away, then who's the contingent beneficiary? And if that's not designated, it goes to your estate. And if your estate has it, holy moly, then we get the probate process, right, if we don't have a living trust. It's public legal. Oh, the other thing is it's a public process. I kind of talked about that, and can be stressful in the executor of heirs. So one of the things sometimes we call this like the poor man's way of doing stuff is why not just put my kids on the deed? And the biggest reason there's a few reasons that you won't. One, you can do that. Yes, you can put your kids on the deed, and then there will be no probate on the house. It will automatically go to your kids. But while you're alive, you lose control. You have loss of control. Now, I know we all have perfect kids, and our kids love us, but I can tell you story after story where one of the kids says, no, I'm not going to let mom sell the house, or I'm not going to let mom do anything with the house. And because they're on title and they have to sign to be able to sell it or anything, mom can't do anything else with it. I've seen kids try to take loans against the house because now they're on title, so they go to whoever the loan person is and say, that's on my house. I have, it needs everyone's signature. So you got 6 kids, well, I happen to have 8. Now, if I put all 8 on my title of my house, it would take all 8 of them to sign to sell the house at some point. What if they get in an accident? And that's not even their fault. That your kids, they get in an accident, and in that accident, maybe it was their fault or it wasn't their fault, but we got a sue happy society, and the first thing they're going to look up is, the insurance company's going to look up is, what asset did your kids have, and your house shows up. All of a sudden, and I have seen people who have lost their homes based on a lawsuit that because they put their kids on the title. So that's not the best way to do it. Divorce in a community property state. So let's say either one of your kids gets a divorce, but they were married to, and you put them on title, and they were married to somebody that they left. That person that they left, that they're divorced to, still has rights in a community property state to that title of your house, and your kids aren't even married to them anymore. You're looking at me like, are you kidding me? That's crazy. What if they stop paying their credit, or there's something happens, they lose their job and they start paying? All of a sudden, that's affected. The creditors are now coming after your place instead of theirs because they don't have any assets because they stopped paying. And then tax and capital gains, there's a gift tax. There's a whole process of, if you die and you give, the capital gains is even from whatever the market value of the house is. But if you gave them the house, or you put them on title when the house, say, was worth $250, now it's worth $500 and they sell it, now there's $250,000 of capital gains that's involved because you gave them a gift when you put them on title. And it doesn't affect it if they pass away and they do that. So that's cool. Living trust is an entity you create to hold title to your assets. You are in complete control of your assets. It does not change the way you do taxes. The trust does not protect you from a lawsuit. The trust does not protect you from a nursing home. The trust simply avoids probate. So some people think, hey, if I get a trust, then nobody can sue me. They can sue you because it's still an asset. But the difference is it's a living document, where like a will is not a living document. What happens when you pass? Well, they have immediate access to the trust, so you have an executor, and then you have beneficiaries. So private, inexpensive, no stress, no probate. So our goal now is to take the stuff out of probate, and I am going to use the right box here, and I'm going to put all this stuff into my living trust now. So I'm going to avoid probate. All my cash is going in there, my cars, my gold, my assets are all now in the trust, and then the trust is now protected as far as where my assets go. And when I pass away, and I pull this out, my kids, oh, yeah, the house is mine now, car is mine, the assets are mine, life insurance automatically went to me, doesn't have to go there. What I say, when you have a lot of, let's say you have several kids, it's even nice to have your beneficiary and your life insurance be the trust, and then the trust explains how to distribute it. Instead of, you can do that where you could put, we could put all 8 kids that we have on our life insurance policy and put equal amounts, but all we had to put into our life insurance policy is the Arnold Family Trust, and then that money goes to the trust, and then the executor puts out, in our case, 12.5% or whatever that is for all 8 kids, we'll be able to get that portion of the trust. So it's immediate, it's private. So where the guy who was sitting in the back house that said my mom, mom said that I could have the house, he has nobody to talk to. He could talk and he could scream and he can be on the ledge and he could even, but if the trust spells it out, and I brought a sample of the trust if anybody who's here wants to see it, but it literally show up, even if it tries to go to probate, the person walks into probate and said, here's my trust, it's signed, they turn around, see ya. Court can't do nothing because this is a legal binding living document that lasts for the whole time. So it's inexpensive. There are folks that do living trust that are pretty expensive. There's a place in town that I think they've done here in Colorado like 80,000 trusts, but they start at like $2,500 or less than half of that. So no stress, no probate. Living trust. The living trust has a trust agreement. So I talked about that's just the agreement that the attorneys would see or people would see or the certification of trust. Then it has a durable power of attorney for finances. So this is in the case where you would have to go to court. Let's say somebody became incapacitated. So my grandpa or my dad became incapacitated where he doesn't mentally able to make decisions. In this trust, it has me as the person who says, I have the durable power of attorney for finances. And so as a result of doing that, I don't have to go to court and ask for conservatorship. And if you have ever been through seeing how conservatorship works, it is so sad. When people, I've seen it where kids are arguing over who gets to be conservator over mom and dad, and why mom and dad doesn't even have the capacity to be able to figure out, and it becomes big family arguments and that kind of stuff. And so I would say it avoids a lot of stress. Durable power of attorney for healthcare, guardianship. I think I've heard a couple people this last week were talking about dad has to come or mom has to come home and they have to live with who they're going to live with. And there's one person that lives in Colorado, one person lives in another state. Are we going to move mom and dad? But you have to go to court to get guardianship if you like. I mean, I guess in a lot of cases you could just move them in and nobody's going to say anything. But once you try to start doing legal stuff as a result of it, like medical stuff, then it gets really difficult. So that is super important, especially for healthcare, because those decisions have to be made on home and who's allowed to. It has what they call a living will, which is the life support. Are we going to pull the plug? Are we not going to pull the plug? Who has the ability to do it? That's all spelled out in our trust. We have a HIPAA release. These days, HIPAA and information is so important. With the HIPAA release, what that does is it says these people have access to my medical records and then can start making decisions on what I'm able to do. We have a pour-over will. So a pour-over will, this is one of the coolest documents that's in here. It means if I buy something after the trust and I didn't get a chance and on the way home I got in a car accident or I forgot to put it in there, it means that it automatically goes there. And then a deed transfer, so we make sure that your house deed is transferred. So this just kind of goes over what I just said. A living will is a legal document that details how you prefer to receive medical. Pour-over will, I just talked about that. Deed transfer, I just talked about that. And that is my 20 minutes of trust. And so I would love to answer any questions. And I may there be a few before we have Abe come
Can
on.
you go back to the beginning? There was a slide I wanted to catch because it has some good information on it.
Oh, I can give you the.
Oh, you just, okay.
Yeah, I can.
Never mind. Never mind.
And anybody that's online, if you guys want a copy of the presentation, let myself or Abe know, and then we'll make sure you get a copy of the presentation. Because there's nothing in here that isn't just, I'm not saying obviously it's not common knowledge because everybody would have trust if it was, but it is knowledge that everybody should be able to have access to. So I will absolutely. Did anybody have any specific questions on why a trust, what needs to go into a trust, why it's so important, why there are access to what they call an irrevocable trust. Irrevocable trust would be you could set up in your living trust where you can go, the reason they call it irrevocable is because I can go take my car back out of it, or I can go take my house back out of it and then put a new house in it, and I can move things in and out. But once you pass away, you can set up trust for your kids, which would be irrevocable trust, where you can say, you know what, if you have an alcohol problem, you can't touch any of this money for 7 years. Or you could say, as somebody that's maybe a minor, until you turn 21, you can only have 10% of the trust. So you start making it irrevocable and you decide, I guess you're in control from the grave, is what you're kind of doing. But you're saying, hey, based on like my sister has a special, my nephew is special needs and he has autism. So she has to set up something that will last his entire life if something were to happen. So it's super important, and she probably has an irrevocable trust for him, so that somebody like a guardian or somebody else can't go, oh, I want all the money right now, and then they go buy something and then end up not taking care of him. And so it's super important. So irrevocable trust means that once you put it in there, it's almost like an act of God to get stuff out of there if it's not spelled out exactly how it's gone in there. So that's a super important thing that we can, when we sit down and we do a consultation and we go through your stuff, then we're good to go. Does that mean I gotta go?
No, you gotta come over here.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I walked out of the She's waving at me like, get it back in the camera. What other?
So what documents are included in the trust? Let's go back to that. So
This one here.
all of that is it kind of like a standard for the living trust?
It is for
Or
most
it
living
like
trusts
what
that
we
most people
offer?
do. It's what we offer and it's what most people have in their living trust. If you get one from whoever you get them from. Additional documents, like if, for irrevocable stuff, that can be added to it. But yes, in the ones that we have here, there's tabs here. What's really kind of cool, as you're looking through it, like we have the community property agreement, but the things like information for survivors, that's a section that's in here where you can say, this is where grandma's watch is, or that kind of stuff. And so you start putting all those things down. You start putting information like family trees, people they should know. It says who should they contact. That's a good one. Like who all do you want me to contact? Because I surely don't know all the people my mom knows or my dad knows. And so they put it out and spell it out. This is who we want you to talk to. This is what you want you to contact. Here is your lost brother that you never knew existed. You might want to contact him. He's not lost. He just nobody told you anybody about him. And then there's a section in here that says what to do when someone dies. So it literally, whoever goes and picks up this document and goes, okay, this is exactly what I need to do. It was all spelled out. Mom had a plan. I know, like when my grandfather, I guess I can tell two real quick stories. My grandfather died. My mom has 11 brothers and sisters, and they all show up. My grandpa had a trust, and it's spelled out, and everybody could even be mad that they didn't get or who gets what. But all I have to say is, this is what Daddy wanted. My mom's neighbor, her husband passed away. This was craziness. Her husband passed away. It was a second marriage, so he had kids, and then I don't know if she had any kids, but he had kids from her previous marriage. They were married for 40 years after he had his kids. So he passes away. His kids, after the funeral, got a U-Haul and backed it up to the house and started moving stuff out of her house that she's been living in for 40 years. That's her stuff. It's not their stuff. But the stuff, well, Dad wanted us to have this, and she's in that point where grieving, she's like, take it, whatever. And literally had to get some new furniture and that kind of stuff that was available, that was in it. And because families just act up after. All right, so.
You've got a
Yes,
question?
yeah.
Someone says, can you put a car and house into a trust if you're still making payments on it?
No, you put your assets in there that are in there, especially a house. It does not have to be paid. So what happens on a mortgage or a car, that lien is still due. So if you say I want in my trust, I want my son to have the Camaro that I bought and I still owe, $15,000 on it. So out of the assets, the son can pay out the $15,000 and then take it away because the bank's going to get their $15,000. If he doesn't have money to pay the $15,000, then the bank's going to come back and get that Camaro, whatever it is. Same thing with the house. When somebody passes away, no matter what kind of loan it is, the bank's going to want the payoff on the house. So the heirs have a choice between, do I sell the house and then we pay it off and then split everything left, or do I try to get a loan on the house and then the kids can kind of decide what they want to do there. But the debt still has to be paid off. But it can definitely be, this is who I want to get it. And kids will fight there were kids fighting over a watch that I think that they were talking about one time. And literally it went on for like a couple years over a watch that they believe that they should have. And it just gets so, then literally not talking to each other for another 10 years over a watch that wasn't decided who wanted it. Most of the time in here, you just put personal property if you don't care. But like my wife has sewing machines, and she told me if she passes away that I can't do nothing with them sewing machines. She told me exactly who I have to give them to and how I have to give them. And I'm like, what if I take up sewing? She said, no, you ain't taking up sewing. So, any other questions?
No.
All right. Well, thank you. I'm going to let Abe come up because the other part of this is, okay, so now let's say that the family gets money and there's money that's available. Probably a good idea is learning how to invest it, learning about financial, what do I do with money that I have, to whether it's investing, or if I don't know what to do, how do I make a plan to be able to do it? And that's what he's going to talk about tonight. So thank you for my time in the trust, and we will